Hi there everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on something a little bit fun. We're working on kind of a second part of our model recovery series, question mark. We'll see how far we kind of go with stuff. But what we've got here is a bunch of old models that have been kind of, through used cabinets in stores, or they've been kind of gone through like bits trades or what have you, eBay, whatever kind of purchasing you find. And you can find some real hidden gold out there, but man, time has not been kind to some of these guys paint job wise, and you might want to maybe just kind of clean them off and do a fresh start. And the way to do that is to basically strip the models of all of their paint. Now I don't know if you can see this here, but Euron is looking pretty angry, which is nice. We got this old Genestealer Cult kind of Magus there, which is kind of cool. A Beastman, kind of Bannerman. Looking really nice and like a really cool kind of 3D. There's stitching and all that stuff in there, but it's a little bit clogged up with paint. So what I'm going to do is, an old Inquisitor here, is I'm going to use basically just simple green to kind of just strip the models, and I find it's the most effortless. It's the easiest on the hands, probably the easiest on the environment. There's acetone and all kinds of stuff as well, but I'm just going to use some simple green, and we're going to see what the end results of that are. Now, simple green is a household kind of cleaner degreaser, and I think the secret is that it kind of gets in between the paint, even if it's an acrylic paint, or kind of like the kind of the latexy based paints, right? But it doesn't matter kind of what kind of paint you have. It seems to work with everything. It's super kind on metals and plastics. You don't get any of that kind of fogging or hazing, and it's pretty awesome. Now I can't even fit this in the screen here, but simple green. Look at the size of this compared to the guys, right? It's crazy. This is a 1 gallon jug, or it's like almost 4 liters of simple green, and it's like dirt cheap. I think it was like $8-9 Canadian dollars, so super duper cheap. And I think like the level is up to the above out of camera, right? So this stuff will last you forever and ever, especially because you can reuse it, right? That's kind of the big appeal. Now, my wife is very patient. She'll let me store the simple green, kind of where you store your bleach and all your other dishwasher, washing machine type stuff. And then on top of that, I've got just any kind of waterproof container, but you want to make sure that you've got a sealable lid on top. And the reason is that simple green smells awesome. It's kind of got this appley question mark kind of smell to it, and it's super nice, right? Like it's a nice kind of pleasant smell, way better than acetone for sure. And I've got a bucket of it now. I've been using this bucket over and over, and you can see if I stir it up, there's lots of debris, and there's actually some models left in there too. I mean, I let them sit in there forever, and I find it really does not damage plastic, so I'm actually pretty keen on that. Now, all I'm going to do with these guys to get them kind of all stripped up is I'm just going to open up the top, plunk them in, yahoo, and off we go. Now, I'm going to store this stuff, and splashes, of course, probably go a little bit lower. I'm going to store this stuff under the sink, and we'll kind of come back in about a few days and see where we're at. Look, he wants to get out. It's crazy. It's kind of creepy. That would be awesome effect for some kind of objective marker. Anyway, get in there, buddy. Anyways, I'm just gonna let those sit for like 2 days. I'm sure the time is less, but I find that 2 days is pretty decent. It's kind of rare sometimes that you need an extra kind of scrubbing, but we'll let them sit and see how it looks. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I've left these guys sit in here for about 2 days or so. Some of these have been in here for much longer. And before we get started, the very first thing you want to do is take your little kind of drain plug thing and turn it upside down so that it's not making that seal, so the water can get through, but you're not going to lose any bits. I actually lost one of the special edition Inquisitors. I lost an arm, and it's down this drain somewhere, and I was tempted a couple times to rip apart, but I decided not to. So this is a container. It's just like dish tabs or whatever that was in there. And I use it now for my simple green drop. And you can see there's all kinds of grody models in there. But let's take a look. So what I'll typically do is I'll fish out a model. See if I got one of the ones we were looking on, Lord of the Rings model. Okay, so if we're looking at like a old Ezreal here who's got way too much paint on him, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to take this guy and I'm going to run a little bit of water. Now, I literally just want just the tiniest little bit of water possible. If I can get there eventually. There we go. So this way I'm not blasting out the water. It can be hot or cold or warm or whatever you like. I like warm water because it's a little easier on the hands for sure. And then I'm going to take what's essentially it's a denture brush. So it's a really rigid kind of brush. If you can see the shape here, it's got a little bit of a pokey kind of end to it here. And you get in kind of the nooks and crannies. And it makes a substantial difference. So anyway, so what I'll do now is I'm going to take this, I'm just going to go in a circular motion, just like you brush your teeth. And what the simple green does is it actually gets in, soaks through the barrier of the paint, and actually just makes it so it doesn't adhere anymore. And you can see it comes right off. Now, this worked out really, really well, because I think the primer on this guy, or there wasn't much primer on this guy, so this is coming off pretty well. That's the dishwasher making noise as we go. But if I grab another guy, if they've had primer on them already, this might be another guy. You see there's blobs of paint from all before, it's kind of gross. But this is another guy that didn't have any primer, and you can see if they were painted old school, it comes right off. And if you need to use that back edge of the brush, you can actually just get in there to all the nooks and crannies, and then you're looking pretty darn solid. Let me grab one more out of the bucket, maybe one with primer. I got loads of stuff that I'm stripping. Yeah, if you find stuff at a buy and sell, or if you find stuff, well, pretty much anywhere, used or what have you, you can go in there and you can just get in there and the simple green will work. Now, you'll see here that this guy, he's stained a little bit red, and that's okay. You can just keep going at it until it comes off. Most of these guys have had that primer issue. Let's see if I can find one, another one here. It's a genuine dude. This guy. So here's our Beastman here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to scrape him off. And you see what will typically happen is if you don't go down to the bare metal, you can actually get right down to the primer. And that's usually fine as well, or at least thin enough that you can always prime over top of it. Now it's just keep that nice trickle of water on there, go in circles. And even if you don't get it all off, it takes that initial paint. If they're really caked with paint, you just keep going and you'll see that this guy's down to primer, and you can feel it with your fingernail. It's usually pretty thin, and that might be fine just to prime over top of it again. So what I'm going to do is I'll take these guys here, I'll give them a good rinse. I'll keep operating in that kind of circular motion, just like you're brushing your teeth. Good to get in all the nooks and crannies. And then some of these guys I may soak again. Some of the guys are just ready to go as it is. I'll stick them up on a piece of paper towel, which I have kind of right here. And I'll just leave it on the paper towel until they're completely dry. Give them about a day or two to dry, and you got brand new models. Alright, so I let my miniatures dry pretty much overnight, plus a little bit of extra time, which is great. And you can see that they've, dried out kind of nicely here. Our denture brush here is all nice and dry. Make sure you got all the paint off it. Obviously, it's not going to be a big deal because it's just going to flake off anyway. And you can see this assorted variety of goodies straight off this kind of paper towel here. I've got a Predator turret canopy here that still needs to go in. This one was stained pretty badly, but it's down to primer, and you can see that it's actually not in bad shape. Whatever's left is going to be pretty thin, which we could paint over. I've got a bat here for my Nagash forces, and you can tell actually that you've got lots of paint left on here now, or primer. Now again, it's all going to depend on what your kind of final version of clean is. If you want super clean, no primer at all, it's going to be a hard road to get all that off, but you can go in and you can just kind of flake away with, a pin, or this is an old X-Acto knife here with the handle kind of broken off. But yeah, you can just go in and can just kind of, flake away at the paint that's on there. You don't actually want paint to flake away under, say, a new primer or something like that, even if it's not that thick. So you just kind of go and just give it a rough kind of over scrape here, and then try and get all those bits and pieces off as you can see them. But again, you can see that even when it's down to primer, it works pretty well. I've got a few models that looked like they were, didn't have any primer on them at all, and the paint just kind of came right off. You can see there's still some paint on the base here, this gold kind of rim across the bottom. But once they strip down, they strip down super nicely, which is great. I got another Lord of the Rings model here. I got Lurtz. And again, you can just get in there and start picking away. Even if there's little nooks and crannies, you can go in there and try and grab you know, like that sharp object, and try and get right in there. And if it doesn't come off, I mean, don't get overly obsessed with it. If it doesn't necessarily come off through a bit of scraping, then it's probably not going to come off after you prime it. So you don't need to sand them down or anything crazy like that. Just get them to the point where you don't want any of that extra primer, you know, to kind of flake off with your other paint over top of it. Let's see what else we got. We got an Azrael and his Watcher here. Again, this is going to be kind of a redo for a friend. And again, just want to go in here and just kind of grab all those little flaky bits that are in there, all these little nooks and crannies, these tucked in bits and pieces. But you can see that they, you know, they did come off, you know, quite well. And again, you can always toss them in again. When would I toss them in again? Well, if we have our friend here, the Mr. Beastman Standard, you can actually see here that some parts we did get down pretty well. And, you know, it's just like a little scrape. Now, obviously, you don't want to scratch up the model and lose detail. But we do have the option here to just kind of go in and start flaking away. Spots like the axe where these bolts are, that's another great spot you can typically go in and try and scrape away. But this one actually came out all right. Now, there's still loads of paint on here, so I am going to send him in again. This was caked on pretty darn thick. But you can see some stuff just up and flakes off, which is kind of nice, especially on these big surface areas here. So he would definitely go in again. I would have put him right back in after I gave him that rinse. Just obviously you want to take the paint off in layers. Sometimes it has to come off because the paint that's surviving will protect the paint underneath. But this guy will go in again for sure. But I want to show you that it's not always perfect on that first kind of run through, because some of them look pretty darn awesome. And with this guy too, our Inquisitor, he came out crazy well, except for this thick bit of red that's kind of left in his cape here, and it's not really a scrape offable part. So even if there's a little bit here, it doesn't hurt at all. I'll toss him in, let him sit for a few days, come back, and then hit him with the brush. Now, all of these guys are metal models, but it doesn't affect the plastic if you've kind of modded something up or you're using a plastic model. It's nice because with an acetone, it typically melts the models, like plastic models, and it's just, it's no good. It's kind of toxic. It's hard on your hands. So I really like using you know, just the Simple Green for that. So even though these are all metals, yeah, I definitely use them for plastic. I've had resin sit in them forever and ever and ever, just trying to get, you know, kind of the mold release off, and it hasn't done anything to the resin at all, which is great. And Simple Green's nice because it smells nice, right? So when you're working along, it's not that, you know, heavy acetone. They got some nicer smelling acetones, but Simple Green is kind of the one that I know is always going to work. If I get busy and I don't get back to it, I don't want any dissolved models. I've also used brake fluid, which is, you know, it's not something you necessarily want to dump down the sink. Where Simple Green is, they say it's a little bit more environmentally friendly. So anyway, that's it for this one. We've got some new models to paint now, which is great. And just wanted to kind of share how I go about that process of, you know, very basically stripping stuff down. So if you get stuff from a buy and sell, or you get stuff like off of a friend or in a trade or something like that, you'll be able to get them back to the original part there. And yeah, it's good for some of the old collector models and all that. So anyway, so if you liked the video, obviously hit that like button. If you want more videos like this, you can jab that subscribe button and make sure you ring that bell. Then you get notifications of all of our future videos. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. I love stripping models because it's like restoring an old car, or that I'm sure it's that same kind of feeling where you're like, you know what? You've got more life left in you, friend. So it's pretty good. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.